So when all of the activists were making their claims after the guilty verdict was read earlier this week about how this was just the beginning of justice, I guess they were being forthright about this, because it looks like they're going to be trying to go back through Chauvin's history in order to continue to dogpile on him, even though he's facing upwards of 75 years in jail. And he could also be serving all 3 of those terms concurrently, so who knows if he's going to be getting all 75. That's if they go one after another. Minnesota's kind of a weird place because he's been charged with 3 of the crimes, right? He was convicted of all 3. So the way that they sentence, depending on who the judge is that's doing the sentencing, could look at his previously fine criminal record, see that as having no prior convictions, look down the slide table, charge everything concurrently. He could only be serving 10 years. That would be the minimum allowed under the Minnesota charger for murder too. Or if it's previous criminal history, and then they take into account that the other 2 charges are there as well, they could bump everything up. So we'll wait for that for sentencing. But they're also looking at charging him for something that was already settled, already done and dusted, that happened 3.5 years ago in September of 2017. Oh man, we're just going to briefly gloss over this because what's going on with the Justice Department right now is scary, okay? Like, you guys remember with censorship, when everything was ramping up on big tech first, who did they come for? They came for Milo because he said bad things about Leslie Jones and Ghostbusters 2016, right? No, it's far more nuanced, and I was paying attention to stuff then, and that was not what he was doing. But hey, 3rd strike and you're out, even though the first couple of strikes were a little bit suspect, like saying that you were a BuzzFeed reporter in your bio and then they take away your verification badge. Kind of fucking retarded, but that's neither here nor there. And that's what people's opinions were at the time. It was Milo, and then it was Alex Jones. Oh yeah, he's that crazy conspiracy theory guy. Even though if you take a look at what's happening right now, a bunch of that stuff was stuff that Alex Jones would be reporting on, and you would have this kind of cross-eyed glance at what he's talking about, even though it's coming to fruition as we're speaking right now. So it always starts with the people who are most objectionable with their opinions, people who are the loudest, the most verbose, the shit disturbers, as it were. Sorry, my neck's killing me. Anyways, speaking of killing, that's what Derek Chauvin tried to do to this 14-year-old kid who didn't do nothing. And this is what they're going to try to bring up on him because, yeah, the Justice Department is totally corrupt. They're going after somebody who right now probably has the lowest public opinion. Maybe, arguably. He's just been charged. Everybody's kind of done with it, so they just think that they can continue to throw dirt on his grave and nobody will notice until it's somebody more high profile. You'll get convicted of something and then they'll start dragging up stuff from the past that was already done and dusted. Late last year, a team of Minnesota state prosecutors was preparing for a trial when the ultimately convict former Minneapolis police officer Derek Chauvin of murdering George Floyd, because he's definitely a murderer. That's what the facts tell us, right? They received a series of videos depicting Chauvin's handling of another case 3 years earlier that, by their own description, shocked them. This was also evidence that was not allowed into the courtroom. And you know what else? That wasn't just because it was one-sided. It was all previous investigations or any sort of previous evidence for both sides. So there was the arrest of George Floyd in 2019, around the same time of year, where he performed exactly the same. Officers came over to his, this time he was sitting in the passenger side, knocked on the window. He would stuff a bunch of drugs in his mouth, held him, he started to overdose, and then he got resuscitated at the hospital. Fucking, it's a history, but you weren't allowed to admit that. And then you also weren't allowed to admit this as well, because it was public knowledge. People knew about this. That's why when anybody would say, hey, you know what, Chauvin kind of has a little bit of a fucked up history, this is one of those things that they'd reference. The video was from September 4th, 2017, allegedly showing Chauvin striking a black teenager in the head so hard that the boy needed stitches. What was he doing leading up to that? This is ABC after all, so you know that they aren't going to give you the entire story. Creepy old guy just kind of popped in. That's weird. And allegedly ignoring the complaints of the boy that he couldn't breathe. Oh my god, after holding him down on the ground for 17 minutes? That's almost twice as long as he held down George Floyd. This kid's got to be, what, super dead, right? Those videos show a far more violent and forceful treatment of this child than Chauvin describes in his report of the incident. Oh my God, it's almost like the Minneapolis Police Department is corrupt. Maybe we should just get rid of police unions. That would be fine. Could have saved that good old St. Floyd's life if we would have just taken earlier action. Now the U.S. Justice Department may do something that the state prosecutors never did. Charge Chauvin with the 2017 incident. I don't know, does that kind of fall under double jeopardy? It's like they already figured it out, but instead the U.S. Department of Justice, because they have nothing fucking better to do, will just come back, try to dig up an old incident, and then charge him federally. What could possibly go wrong? 2 months ago, federal prosecutors in Minneapolis brought witnesses before a federal grand jury to provide testimony related to the incident, the Minneapolis Star-Tribune reported at the time. And this week, a source informed of the probe told ABC that the investigation is still underway, with the Justice Department still weighing whether to bring federal charges against Chauvin for both the 2017 incident and George Floyd's death. Well, why didn't you do it when you had the chance? It's almost like you were waiting to see what you could get him on, how receptive the court process, the jury trial, would be in in Minneapolis and Minnesota at large, how they would be to your George Floyd case, which is far more secure. Because what would you charge him for? Assault? Do we know what was leading up to that? No, you just have, once again, just a little snippet that you can propagandize people with in order to force through whatever type of conviction you want. Officials at the Minneapolis Police Department were recently briefed on the federal government's interest in the 2017 incident. They've had 3.5 years to go through this. I can't believe they're going to try to do this. A move that came before the Justice Department this week launched a sweeping investigation into Minneapolis Police Department's policing strategy. Yep, exactly. Remove any state or city authority into the local police department and move everything towards the DoJ. What could possibly go wrong? We could continue in with this, but hopefully nothing else happens with it. But I want you guys to be aware that this is something that is happening, and it is something that will continue to happen, because I can only see stuff like this getting worse. We've seen way too many other examples in different forums such as this, that this is not just going to be a one-off. And then we got somebody else who is also linked to the trial. We had a picture. You remember this guy right here. He was the defense's expert witness on all things medical, former medical officer, and now all of his work's going to be gone through and double checked. Why? Because this is a way of political assassination. Okay? This is to undermine somebody who tried to stand up, somebody who got paid for their services, somebody who was just representing the wrong side. That's what happened. We've seen that with the lawyers, Mike Vanderveen, David Chauvin. I don't think anybody bugged Bruce Castor because he did such a poor job at the impeachment trial. But as soon as everything was all done and dusted, and the media and the powers that be didn't get the result they wanted, so they went after everybody else. And now, in this case, they're going after anybody who is defending the other side, because, hey, they were defending somebody who killed an innocent black man, and it was all about races, right? Whatever. This is so this is terrible. This is really terrible. Maryland medical examiner who testified that Derek Chauvin did not kill George Floyd will have 17 years worth of his in-custody death reports independently reviewed, the district attorney of Maryland said. I did... in the lead up to the 2020 election, if you guys weren't around, I did a bunch of coverage of different local races in the state of Maryland and in the city of Baltimore itself, mostly because my favorite football team is the Baltimore Ravens, and I see that state, the city of Baltimore itself, just falling deeper and deeper into disarray, and I've seen a bunch of good candidates emerge and tried to push for something better, because this right here, this is a political hit job. Former head medical examiner who testified that police officer Derek Chauvin did not kill George Floyd will have 17 years worth of his in-custody death reports independently reviewed, officials have announced. Dr. David Fowler testified that the primary cause of George Floyd's death was sudden heart rhythm disturbance during police restraint due to underlying heart disease, contradicting several experts who said Floyd died due to a lack of oxygen. Remember, follow the experts. Unless they're not telling you what you want to believe, then you can just follow somebody else's experts. He also said that Floyd's drug use and exposure to carbon monoxide, that was such a throwaway statement, okay? Yeah, his head was down by the exhaust pipe, okay? Could have been. I don't know. Depending on which way the wind was blowing, he could have also not have sniffed any carbon monoxide from the exhaust pipe. What are we doing? No, the media wants to run with that because it's just so kooky and wacky, and who could possibly bring that up? Maryland Attorney General Brian Frosh, who looks like John Bolton's AIDS-riddled brother, made the review announcement Friday, a day after receiving a letter from former Washington, D.C. medical examiner Roger A. Mitchell that was signed by 431 doctors from around the country. Oh, it gets even worse, okay? 431 doctors who were just so upset that this guy would come in, provide expert testimony. Do you see what we're dealing with here? I said the dark days were going to be ahead, but I didn't think every profession would be weaponized. You had all of those law professors and respected lawyers sign that big petition that Donald Trump must be impeached. And then we're having this here. We're having the medical profession weaponized, okay? Like we haven't known that this has been the case for the previous year. Just look around and see nobody doing anything and being locked in their homes. Go outside and go for a walk. Just go for like an hour-long walk. See how many people you can spot, especially if you're in a larger-ish city. It shouldn't be that hard to find. You will find some asshole walking alone by themselves, wearing a mask, or driving a vehicle by themselves, still wearing that stupid mask. This is not about truth. This is not about honesty. It is about power. That's why they talk about it all the time. Okay? They're trying to do as much as they can while they have the elected offices that they do right now. Democrats, authoritarians across the board. We're going to be talking about how stupid the GOP is here lately, and they're not immune from this criticism either. These are just bad people who want dissenters punished. Frosh agreed and said in a statement on Friday that it is appropriate for independent experts to review reports issued by the Office of the Chief Medical Examiner regarding deaths in custody. Yeah, that's funny. The letter said Fowler's testimony and conclusions were outside the bounds of accepted forensic practice and that all of his previous work should be questioned. Why? Why now? Why now? This isn't the first time he's been on trial as an expert witness. He's done this stuff before, but never before has there been 431 doctors pen a letter co-signed to this insanity. Really gets the old noggin jogging now, doesn't it? But yeah, the guy on the left there in the pictures, Brian Frosh, the Maryland Attorney General, who also looks like the police commissioner of every bad 80s film. He has other things that he should be looking after, okay? Because there's something that went horribly, horribly underreported. It's pretty easy to tell why, and we got to go back to ABC for this one. Because a state trooper fatally shot a 16-year-old after responding to reports of an armed man. Peyton Ham was allegedly carrying an airsoft gun and a knife. What are you noticing in that headline? Okay, you got a police officer. You got a 16-year-old armed kid. Because remember, Ma'Khia Bryant was also 16, but she was an adult, right? She was adultified, as per one fucking retarded professor saying, oh, she was just adultified. But no, she was just a kid, right? This is a 16-year-old armed man. What else is missing from a regular ABC headline? Well, that will be race. And you know what else has happened? April 13th. Has anybody heard word one about this one? A kid, if we're going to go by those standards. Somebody who's not of legal age. Can legally drive, but can't vote. Can't go to a bar, even if they were open. But you didn't hear about it for obvious reasons. Maryland State Police are investigating a trooper-involved shooting in Leonardtown that ended with the death of a 16-year-old. Still haven't got to it, have ya? Just before 1:30 p.m. local time on Tuesday, police received two separate 911 calls about a man acting suspicious while holding what looked like a gun, police said in a statement Tuesday. A uniformed Maryland State trooper then arrived at the scene and confronted a male teenager, still not going to add in that descriptor, huh? Who has now been identified as Peyton Ham. The teen was armed with what looked like a gun and a knife, police said. The Maryland State Police Leonardtown barracks, 8 years of that, shared the news of the shooting on Facebook Tuesday afternoon. No press conference, no major media coverage. Just goes to show you there's a double standard here. Saying a trooper has responded to a report of a possibly armed man. According to a police statement, a witness told investigators that he saw Ham taking a shooting stance and pointing a gun at the trooper, at which point the trooper fired at Ham, wounding him. A second witness allegedly told investigators that after the trooper fired the first time, they saw Ham pull out a knife and try to get up. The trooper then ordered Ham to drop the knife before he fired again, the statement reads. Why didn't he just shoot the knife out of his hand? Okay, he might have done that. Let's continue. The trooper, who was assigned to Leonardtown Barrack and has been a Maryland State Trooper for nearly 3 years, reported to the shooting and called for EMS. Listen, all this kid was doing, he was just standing in the yard. He had an aggressive stance. Did that mean he was gonna shoot you or anything? I'm obviously being sarcastic. Ham was transported to MedStar St. Mary's Hospital, where he was pronounced dead. The statement reads, an autopsy will soon be conducted. After the incident, a knife was recovered at the scene, but I thought he was holding it. Weird. Ham's gun was later determined to be an airsoft gun, which is a close representation of an actual handgun. Here you go, everyone. A little shotgun, okay? That's what they look like. I had this, I think this is like 16 years old at this point. Go and shoot targets with my friends after school. That could have been what the kid was holding. But that right there, that's what was missing. I showed you the entire article. We can just go back for posterity's sake if you don't believe me. All the way from the top. I don't care what you have to say, Rochelle Walensky. There's nothing in there to do with anything. It's just another Johnson & Johnson plug because they're apparently going back after the pause they figured out about the blood clots. Need not go any further, but yeah, as you can see, all the way to the bottom, all the way to the top, no picture of him whatsoever, but there he is. That's why you didn't hear word one about this stuff. He was apparently a sweet young man, talented honor school student with promise, incredibly smart, gifted, sweet young man, just like Michael J. Fox from Family Ties, preferably without the shakes, I'm assuming. And that was the big old knife that they recovered at the scene. He had a Leatherman on him. Yeah, some shit's really not adding up on this one. And that's what the kid was holding. Oh my goodness. This is why you can't take mainstream media seriously. Sometimes the New York Post is bad, but oftentimes they're pretty based, and we got to cover them in the next story. But I wanted you guys to know about this because it went completely and utterly under the radar. I only heard a passing mention to this, and I just thought that I had to cover it because, oh my god, in the wake of all of these police shootings that are so unjustified that'll get the ire of all the celebrities and all of the major athletes to come out and tweet and support and signal all of their virtue, this one right here, I don't know. I haven't seen the footage, and we're getting conflicting statements, so I'm always skeptical of the police, so hopefully a thorough and honest investigation by the Maryland Attorney General is forthright and coming. Highly doubt it. They got to go do some fucking political assassination right now. And with that said, guys, we got to go talk about the insanity at the federal level because this right here is disheartening to say the least, but it's important to talk about. I thank you all very much for the gift of your time. I've been Don Consuelo. I want you to follow your gut and get after it. Take care, everyone.